we wanted to take a quick look at the federal budget. And this week, Donald Trump, a man who constantly promised that he would run America like a business, gave us our clearest sense yet of how he plans to do that.
The president revealing his new budget proposal just moments ago.
It is promising the most dramatic change in the federal government since World War II.
This is a budget blueprint from the President of the United States, a document that he puts out there. It is his wish list. It is the way that he would like the government to be funded and what his priorities are.
Yes, this budget is simply a blueprint, what's known in Washington as a skinny budget. What is in this thing?
The budget blueprint calls for a $54 billion increase in defense spending. Take a look at this graphic. On the left, you see a department's getting an increase. That would be Defense, Homeland Security, Veterans Affairs, the agencies facing cuts, the Environmental Protection Agency, the State Department, the Agriculture Department, the Labor Department, Health and Human Services, and the list goes on and on.
And while this budget is very unlikely to pass in its current form, it is worth taking just a few minutes to look at it. Partly because it gives us a clear sense of our president's priorities, but also because it gives us a chance to get to know yet another one of the Trump administration's key characters. Because we've met most of them by now. There's Steve Bannon, there is Kellyanne Conway, and there's Stephen Miller. Well, for this budget, we got to know Mick Mulvaney. He is the director of the Office of Management and Budget, and I'll let him give you just a glimpse into the highly scientific process by which he put this budget together.
We came at it, actually wrote the budget by going through the president's speeches, going through the interviews he had given and talking to him directly and finding out what his priorities were. We took those words, those policies, and turned them into numbers.
Take this statement on military spending.
You're going to make the country rich again and strong again so that you can afford it, and so you can afford military and all of the other things.
But apparently Mulvaney heard increased defence spending by $54 billion because that is what he's proposing. And as for the budget's funding for nuclear weapons, they presumably had their bases in statements like this one.
Putin has built up their military again and again and again. Their military is much stronger. He's doing nuclear. We're not doing anything. Our nuclear is old and tired, and his nuclear is tippy-top, from what I hear.
I don't know how you turn that into policy. Now, that apparently means a $1.4 billion increase for the National Nuclear Security Administration while cutting the Department of Energy's overall budget by $1.7 billion.
The Department of Energy was created in 1977 as part of the larger federal response to high energy prices. Today it consumes $29 billion a year in taxpayer dollars, $240 for each American household. The department has a long history of wasteful spending, distorting energy markets with regulations and subsidies that attempt to pick winners and losers, often with disastrous results. The desire to subsidize energy is bipartisan. One of the earliest boondoggles was the Republican-backed Clinch River breeder in Tennessee in the 1970s. Congress devoted $3 billion to the reactor, and Congress finally terminated funding for the failed program in 1983. How best to store nuclear waste is an important choice. For the United States, it began in 1982 with the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. Yucca Mountain was selected in 1987 as the site for storage of nuclear waste by 1998. The site hasn't opened and won't open for another decade, if ever. That's despite federal spending on the project of more than $15 billion. Every president from Ronald Reagan to Barack Obama has supported subsidies for developing clean coal technology, but the programs have a poor track record. The GAO examined 13 projects and found that 8 had serious delays or financial problems, 6 were behind their original schedules by 2 to 7 years, and 2 projects went bankrupt. More recently, a hugely expensive clean coal plant in Mississippi that received $700 million in federal taxpayer money is grossly over budget and is a financial calamity for the Southern Power Company, according to the Wall Street Journal. Then Solyndra, a solar panel company that received a $535 million U.S. Energy Department loan guarantee before going bankrupt. Under the Solyndra restructuring plan, the government is projected to recoup only about $27 million of that loan. Much of what the Department of Energy does could and should be done by other parts of the federal government. Nuclear security, defense environmental cleanup, and uranium-related activities should be handled by the Defense Department. And nuclear waste disposal and non-defense environmental cleanup should be handled by the EPA. What's left are programs that duplicate or supplant private sector activities, like energy research or energy regulations that have destabilized markets, reduced domestic output, and harmed consumers.
Now, these cuts have made headlines for their severity, but no one can say they're surprised by who is on the receiving end of some of the worst of them. For instance, his 31% cut to the EPA is really just making good on some pretty clear words.
Environmental protection, what they do is a disgrace. Every week they come out with new regulations. They make it impossible.
Who's going to protect the environment?
We'll be fine with the environment. We can leave a little bit, but you can't destroy businesses.
We can leave a little bit of the environment. Specifically, this fish, this bit of crabgrass in Utah, and one of these meerkats. So, don't get too attached, one on the right.
Mr. Madison, what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I've ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
And look, there is nothing wrong with cuts in principle. But with budgets, as with haircuts, it's where and how you cut that matters. And it is important to note, non-defense discretionary spending is already at its lowest level relative to GDP in over 15 years, lower than any year of Reagan's presidency. And that's what makes something like Trump's proposed 28% cut to the budget for the State Department and USAID so frightening. Although Secretary of State Rex Tillerson doesn't seem that worried about it, and one of the reasons he gave for that was a little surprising.
What the President is asking the State Department to do is, I think, reflective of a couple of expectations. One is that as time goes by, there will be fewer military conflicts that the U.S. will be directly engaged in.
Whoa. Hold on there. You honestly think we're going to have fewer military conflicts under President Trump?
But we know that America is better off when there is less conflict, not more. We must learn from the mistakes of the past. We have seen the war and the destruction that have ravaged and raged throughout the world, all across the world. America is willing to find new friends and to forge new partnerships where shared interests align. We want harmony and stability, not war and conflict. We want peace wherever peace can be found. America is friends today with former enemies. Some of our closest allies decades ago fought on the opposite side of these terrible, terrible wars. This history should give us all faith in the possibilities for a better world.
I was very flattered when Henry Kissinger said I ran the State Department better than anybody had run it in a long time.
But she might not want to name drop a guy who orchestrated coups, propped up dictators, and probably violated international law. Everyone knows that back in 2002, Senator Clinton voted for the invasion of Iraq. Even though she now admits that it was a mistake, has she learned from it? Well, her actions at the State Department are telling. Let's start with the bombing of Libya during the Arab Spring. Clinton was the Obama administration's most influential advocate in toppling the Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Following the death of Gaddafi, NATO bombing ended, but Clinton had no strategy for securing the country after his overthrow. The chaos that followed, free-flowing weapons and armed militias, have turned Libya into a country with competing governments, no rule of law, and a growing ISIS presence.
Libya actually held elections. They elected moderates. They have tried to piece together a government against a lot of really serious challenges.
But Libya isn't the only case of Clinton's militaristic approach. Whenever the Obama administration was divided about using force, Clinton was on team intervention. She repeatedly advocated for the 2009 decision to send thousands of troops to continue the war in Afghanistan. Vice President Joe Biden and others opposed it. But at a time when the U.S. is dropping sanctions, Clinton says there should be new ones. On Syria, Clinton's distanced herself from Obama. She's called for a more aggressive approach, including a no-fly zone, more airstrikes, more special ops, and
ground forces actually taking back more territory from ISIS.
And making big cuts to things like the State Department, international development, and the EPA isn't just short-sighted, it doesn't even make fiscal sense.
You're so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
The EPA is currently responsible for 0.2% of federal spending, and the State Department and USAID are 1.4%. So you don't cut those agencies as a cost-saving measure, you do it as a fuck you.
Say what?
There is sort of a disconnect. Everybody in the abstract is for a balanced budget, but when it comes down to the particulars, they're not really for cutting anything. They'll say, well, it's just $300 billion. You're not going to balance the budget with that. But my argument back to them is if you can't cut $300 million, how are you going to cut $1.5 trillion that we're spending each year that we don't have?
But his pettiness extends even further when it comes to some of the tiny items his budget eliminates funding for, like the National Endowments for the Arts and the Humanities.
And this is Artworks, the weekly podcast produced at the National Endowment for the Arts. I'm Josephine Reed. You might remember...
and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which last year made up less than 0.02% of federal spending. But according to Mulvaney, it is unfair to expect people to even pay that much.
When you start looking at the places that will reduce spending, one of the questions we asked was, can we really continue to ask a coal miner in West Virginia or a single mom in Detroit to pay for these programs? The answer was no. We can ask them to pay for defense, and we will. But we can't ask them to continue to pay for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
OK, that argument isn't just insulting, it's absolutely ridiculous. Because while, yes, the military keeps single mothers safe, on a day-to-day basis, Bob the Builder is an actual lifesaver for them.
I mean, this is useful because this is something I type regularly on the odd moments that I get to actually look at YouTube comments once in a while. Not an argument. It's not an argument. It's not an argument.
And if your real concern is for the hard-earned dollars of single mothers and coal miners, let's break that down, shall we? Because if your single mother needs to work and her child attends a school, she might need access to something like Wings for Kids, an after-school program that serves 1,600 children in 3 states. And guess what?
Under President Trump's new proposed federal budget, Wing's primary source of funding would be eliminated. Bridget Laird is the CEO.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel devastated.
Jessica Williams has 2 daughters in the program. What happens if it goes away?
I really don't know how I really don't know. I will be lost.
But the learning is not over. More than 130 of the students, most of whom live in low-income households, are part of an after-school program called Wings for Kids. It's called Wings because the goal of the program is to encourage kids to soar. They learn, they socialize, they have snacks.
3, 2,
They even have their own creed. But under President Trump's new proposed federal budget, Wing's primary source of funding would be eliminated. Wings for Kids gets $1.6 million a year from the federal program called 21st Century Learning Centers.
President Trump's budget director declared there is no demonstrable evidence that after-school programs help kids do better in school. But the people in charge here demonstrably disagree.
The CEO says her organization participated in a 4-year-long controlled study and says it clearly showed
Increases in positive behavior, decreases in negative behavior.
And what do you like best about Wings for Kids?
Building friendships with some of my friends,
Is it fun to be here too?
of course. It's a good place to learn and it's fun to know everything. And there's a lot of fun that you can do in activities.
You like hanging out with your friends?
Very much.
they have snacks.
Okay, so that is a really bad cut. And as for Mick Mulvaney's hypothetical coal miners, let's take a look at what Trump's budget cuts from the Appalachian region.
One of those programs at risk of losing all funding is the Appalachian Regional Commission, which funded 35 different projects and programs in Tennessee alone last year.
35 programs in just Tennessee. And that list includes things like the Healthier Tennessee Communities Initiative, the Boys and Girls Clubs of Tennessee Valley, and the Governor's Books from Birth Foundation.
It's not an argument.
And by the way, those cuts are coming in a state that went for Trump, which leads us to the weirdest thing of all here. Some of the cuts in Trump's budget heavily impact groups that voted for him.
The one that strikes me is rural airports. We spend money to help subsidize rural airports where they otherwise couldn't have air service. Now, maybe that doesn't make any sense in an ideal world. Maybe on principle that's a bad thing. But the people who are going to lose their airports if we stop doing that are the people who voted for Donald Trump.
There's something on the bill they call the Essential Air Services. When they call something and they name something in Washington, realize that it's the opposite of what they've named it. It really should be called the Unessential Air Services. It is the subsidized air travel to small airports that cannot sustain commercial airlines. For example, there's a small airport near the Great Lakes. The tickets are subsidized to the point of $4,270 per ticket. Often these airports are airports near where a congressman lives because he or she wants a direct flight to Washington. And so I call it the unessential air services. It's about $300 or $400 million. The first week I was there, we introduced, or the first or second week, a bill that would cut $500 billion in spending in 1 year. And official Washington just, their eyes rolled back in their head and said, no way. And we didn't get much applause for that either. I think we got 3 or 4 co-sponsors. But when I went home, or when I talked to a Tea Party group or to a Liberty Minded group, they say, well, $500 billion is a good start, but that's 1/3 of 1 year's problem. Get back there and get to work. So it's really the disconnect. Washington can't imagine cutting $500 billion. And when you talk to the rest of America, the grassroots of America says it's a good start, but still not enough. That's where the disconnect is.
So think about that. Trump's rise was fueled by people in red states who were justifiably irritated that liberals sometimes refer to them as flyover country. But this budget could literally turn some of them into flyover country because there would be no other option.
Often these airports are airports near where a congressman lives because he or she wants a direct flight to Washington.
And even some Republicans are now wary of this budget. Hal Rogers, a Republican and former chair of the House Appropriations Committee, went so far as to call many of the cuts draconian, careless, and counterproductive. But if anything resembling this budget passes, many of Trump's own voters will likely wind up getting burned, and they are going to be angry, and Trump himself should know that, given that, in The Art of the Deal, he said this.
You can't con people, at least not for long. You can create excitement, you can do wonderful promotion and get all kinds of press, and you can throw in a little hyperbole. But if you don't deliver the goods, people will eventually catch on.
Oh, I think people are catching on. It's taking longer than is perhaps ideal, but I think pretty soon all of us will be fed up, right up to the tippy fucking top.
Your organization's terrible. Let's go. You are fake news.
Sir. Not an argument. It's not an argument. It's not an argument.